it's better for all of us. Yeah, Augustine, would you like to do an introduction?
Yeah, why not? So, if we are live and everybody, welcome to New Data Jazzers podcast. So, current today we are going from different locations. So, I'm connecting from Chicago from Data Insight Summit. So, whoever is around can come by and say hi. And Nicola from Standard Location, and we have today a guest from Italy as well.
Yep.
So, probably. You heard of him, you came across his name somewhere. And Alberto, welcome. Glad to have you with
Hi.
us. And we'll try speak with Italian accent, but if we don't manage, we apologize in advance. And Nicola, heading over to you. I don't know with you. Start with a question. We will let Alberto do the introduction himself. So you pick.
Yeah, sure. Let our guest do a short introduction, and then we will slowly start with the questions. So, first of all, just welcome Alberto, and many thanks for joining us for Data Jazzers live show.
Thank you, and hope people will enjoy. Augustine, I've seen that you don't have an Italian accent, but you start moving your hands the right way. So you're actually entering the Italian mood, which is totally cool.
We practiced it earlier, so just for this one. And
Like Pippo,
Yeah,
Pippo
but
Inzaghi,
it's
like
not just
Pippo
the
Inzaghi.
hands. You also need to position your hand the right way and choose what to do because this is I want to eat, this is what you want from me. So you need to practice with the hands. It's important.
and
What
just
I
beware.
expected.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I wasn't paying attention. Am I expected to do an introduction? So yes. Okay. Hi everybody. Also, ciao friends, and welcome to this new video. I'm Alberto Ferrari. I work at SQL BI with Marco Russo. We do all things about DAX and Tabular. So anything related to DAX is basically our bread and butter. We do trainings, we do conferences, we write articles. We try to push the DAX language to people so that people learn and enjoy DAX. That's it. I don't have anything more to say about me.
When you are saying ducks now, I just went over Daniel Oettiker's Tableau Editor here, and they have great stickers, which are right ducks like in Italian, and I think it's a perfect one for introduction for this session. So, Alberto, can you explain us how to write ducks as Italian?
Ah, that's something that I always try to understand since the very beginning. There are several Italian guys who write really good DAX, and I think because DAX is so complex, DAX is hard, and one quality Italians have is the ability to somehow be creative, think out of the box, find uh, really creative solutions to any tough problem. And so I think that's the reason why Italy gave birth to several DAX developers. Most of them just speak Italian, so they are not known abroad. Just because there's a language barrier and they don't know English, they are not public. But we do have several Italians writing DAX, which is strange. I don't know exactly the reason, except that the fact that we are creative. Now, DAX is a strange language. You know DAX, you know how it works. If you want to really master it, you need to master a lot of complex concepts. If you don't reach that level, it, it works like magic. You write a piece of DAX code, it works, you are happy, but you don't really understand the details about how it works. Italians, we are creative, so we basically spend a lot of time trying to find creative solutions to whatever problem we have. But if you go to the most practical issue, how do you learn DAX, how to write good DAX code, you need to spend a lot of time studying. You need to spend a lot of time understanding the basics and understanding the details, because most of the problems with DAX are with small details. that completely break your code or make it not working, which is totally good for consultants because DAX looks simple. A lot of people start to write DAX and then they find it hard. They are not able to go past very basic formulas. So for consultants that know how to write DAX, that's incredibly good because there's a lot of work to do in order to solve all, all the issues. But for students that want to learn DAX, the best advice that I can give to them is spend time studying and practicing the fundamentals. Learn the row context, the filter context, the context transition. These are the three pillars of DAX. And when you think you understood them, then it's time to go back and practice again. And you discover that you actually didn't understand all the details. But when you master them, when you totally understand what the filter context, the row context, and the context transition are, at that point you are a master of DAX. There's nothing more to learn. It's just a matter of finding different way of expressing the code. Then there's the topic of optimizing. That covers a completely different world, but that's already in the optimizing sections. If you just stick to write good DAX code, practicing the fundamentals is the most relevant things. And the other thing that I always tell to my students, and nobody listens, is don't start with production reports. Don't start with real reports. I have so many students coming to my trainings. They know the basics of DAX, and they struggle to learn as much as they can in 3 days because they know that 3 days later their boss will start to ask them to go in production and start writing good DAX code like magic. And this is not going to happen. DAX requires weeks, if not months, of practice before you can actually go and build something good in production. So you need to train slowly and don't run too fast, learn the fundamentals well. And after a few months of training, you will be able to write any expression. Out of my curiosity, both of you, how much did it take to you to learn DAX?
I'm still learning, and I don't consider myself at all proficient in DAX, honestly. So I'm still, as you say, I'm still going back, returning to those basic concepts like context transition, row context, filter context.
Okay.
It's always a good refresher, and every time I face some problems, I'm realizing how much more time I need to spend going back and fortifying those concepts again.
Yeah, and we have an interesting question by Bernat coming in. So he says see you always use very easy DAX functions, Alberto. So should we stay away from fancy functions like less non-blank value?
That's a complex question, as any question. I'm thinking about how to provide a good answer. There are two different topics to cover. We typically use very simple, easy DAX functions because our goal is mainly educational. So we want people to understand the code. And as soon as you use a fancy function, you will be in trouble quite easily because those fancy functions do a lot of work and not all the people understand them. Last known blank value is a perfect example, like last known blank. They are functions that do a lot of work and they are not easy to understand. That's the reason why we do not use them so much. But there are other reasons why we don't use them. Any function that does anything except the basic stuff, they will do it their way. So if the Microsoft engineer optimized that code in a perfect way, then they will be faster. Think about rankx. Rankx is a function that does a lot of work and it's super optimized. So it's basically impossible to produce a code that computes a ranking better than rankx. But specifically for last known blank value and last known blank, they are not super optimized. They are very generic functions, so they can solve several problems, but it's very likely that if you use the basic functions the right way, you will obtain much better performance. Another example that most people do not realize and do not understand properly are all the time intelligence functions. If you want to compute a year to date, you use dates YTD as everybody else, or everybody does, or dates YTD or total YTD. And that solves very quickly time intelligence, very quickly from the DAX developer point of view. So you can write very quickly an expression that computes the YTD. But to say that YTD is optimized that way, the answer is no. This YTD is a slow function. The way it works, the number of cases that it needs to check and the number of calculations that it needs to make is really huge. So it's pretty simple to write a DAX code using basic uh, DAX functions that outperforms days YTD, same period last year, and most of the time intelligence calculations. Therefore, over time, we got used to know which function performs well and which are easy to use, but they do not have good performance. And we got used to write DAX the good old way using just basic functions. So it's not that you need to stay away from those functions. If you are a casual user of DAX, they do their job. And if you're a casual user of DAX, it's likely you don't have billions of rows to scan. So performance is not really a big issue for you. But as soon as you have the need to seek for the best performance or to write code that works the best way in your specific model, then yes, I would stay away from any function that does too many things, and I will write my DAX code by myself. It's a bit more verbose, but you have a final control on the path that you want DAX to perform the calculation. So because we spend a lot of time optimizing code, we basically use most of the time basic functions, and we write a bit longer DAX code, but that runs better and we can understand it even better.
Yeah, thanks, Alberto. Yeah, when you explain things, yeah, it sounds like everyone can master DAX in in a week or two. But we know that it's not the case. And some time ago, you wrote an article about 7 reasons why DAX is not easy. So when someone asks me about DAX, I'm always referring them to your article to start from that point and then dig deep to specific concepts. In the meantime, since that article, did something change? Is it now maybe more than 7 reasons or maybe less than 7 reasons?
Actually, I remember that article because I loved it. And that was an article I always wanted to write. The number 7 just came because I started listing reasons for which I don't think DAX is a simple language. And 7 came out as a number, and we decided to title it 7 reasons. But there is only one reason actually why DAX is not easy, and it is the approach of people learning DAX. When we learn any language we need to learn, we proceed by examples. So we Google, we search for, we Bing or we Google. Typically you Bing, you don't find it, and then you Google. We search for examples that try to solve our problem, and then we start changing the code, adapting, and we learn slowly through examples. That works. It works with most concepts that we ever have to learn. The thing is, this doesn't work with DAX. DAX requires you a completely different approach. DAX is more like mathematics, more like physics, more like if you want to become a surgeon, you do not start practicing before you know very well the theory, because otherwise you start cutting bodies without knowing exactly what you're doing, and that doesn't typically have a good outcome. So you first study and then you start practicing, and when you are confident about what you're doing, only then you start doing your job. DAX requires this approach, and this approach doesn't work well in the modern time because nowadays everything is so quick, so fast. People expect to have results in a matter of minutes, in a matter of days. They do not plan to have like 6 months of training and practices before writing their first DAX expression. To me, the reason why I'm feeling old right now is because I think the world is just running too fast. There's no reason to run that fast. I would prefer to slow down and do things the proper way. Just to give you an example, I was once in Amsterdam delivering a training, and there was a girl that she was having issues, performance issues with DAX. So I said, okay, that's fine. Let's sit down. We spend a couple of hours together. We see the problem. We solve it. And eventually we did it. Uh, Her report was not bad at all. It was a nice report. It was running fast, just a small performance issue. But at the end of the dinner, I told her, well, if you want to go further and start understanding how to optimize DAX, you can start with this video. And I gave her a link to a video that was an introduction to optimization. She just opened the web page and say, wow, that's an hour video. I'm never going to see an hour of a video just to start learning something. I say, no, you didn't get it. 1 hour is just a beginning. So from in an hour, you have the basics to understand what you need to learn. And it's a trip that will last for months, not hours. And so I asked her, okay, so what's the maximum length of a video that you are willing to watch if you want to learn? And she answered, well, 5 minutes is okay. 10 minutes, I really need to be interested in a topic. More than 10 minutes is a big no. I'm not going to watch it because it's too long. So that's the attitude of people learning nearly everything today. And that doesn't work with DAX. You cannot learn some X if you don't understand the raw context. You cannot learn if you don't understand different evaluations. You cannot understand how to optimize DAX code if you don't understand bits and bytes and memory consumption and scan times, a lot of details. So people want to obtain results very quickly. They do, because of course Microsoft Marketing pushes people to start obtaining good results very, very quickly. But then they stop and they start blaming DAX or Microsoft or whatever. TikTok DAX.
New
Well, the
channel on
problem is
SQL
actually,
BI, new series of videos.
yeah, it's like that girl that teaches how to use Excel
Excel,
dancing.
yeah,
She's
yeah.
gorgeous and it's very nice to watch. But I think you will never see me teaching DAX dancing just because I'm not able to dance. So that's the biggest issue.
Dexing instead of dancing.
So to me, the big problem is just one, is the approach of people. DAX requires you to proceed slowly, to learn, to do one brick after the other and do not build on top of knowledge that is not really well established. That takes a long time, and the market right now gives value to people who are fast in producing a very quick result, and they do not actually give the correct value to correctness, to speed, to build a sound system, to build a system that is reliable. And I also think that we are blaming DAX for, mostly we blame DAX for the wrong data model. If I have to say what's the biggest mistake that 99% of newbies does is not in DAX, is the wrong data model. They build a model that is not correct. It's not a star schema. It's not following best practices. It's not just not the wrong data model for analysis. And then they struggle in writing DAX because they are seeking to obtain a result from a model which is just wrong. And I think that, again, the market is to blame for that. Just think about, I don't know if you agree with me, but I do think data modeling is the primary skill that any business analysis developer
Yeah.
should acquire. And if you think about the modern tools we use, Power BI, there's not a single warning or a single best practice which is enforced by the tool in order to check that your data model is actually a good data model. Power BI or any tool should have like a model analyzer feature that says, yeah, you built a star schema, everything looks fine, your measures are scanning the model the right way, you're doing it right. Or if you load everything in a single table, they tell you, you know what? That model looks more like Excel than Power BI, so it would be better if you build some dimensions and maybe might make some proposals like checking the names or checking data distribution, the engine could suggest you a better way to express your model. So to me, that's the biggest problem of data of business analysis as of today, and there's no tool that helps you in building the right model. People don't know Kimball. People don't know the good old way we always use to build data models. So they build the wrong model, and then they try to solve the problem with DAX. They fail because solving complex problems with DAX is hard. And then at that point, they start blaming DAX and Microsoft and Power BI because it's not easy enough. Whereas the problem is that we are asking to people who do not possess the right skills to do things which are hard. And also the tools are not pushing the right way, the best practices, and pushing people to learn the most important skills, not just DAX, but data modeling first, then everything else later.
I can agree with you 100%. Yeah.
And talking about that, here's also Zoran's question. So, what do you think about this?
Oh, can I talk about somebody else's work? That doesn't look fair to me. I don't like that. So Greg Deckler has its way of teaching details and teaching DAX and doing its job. Avoiding calculator to me is the worst thing that you can do with DAX, because calculator is the key to performance, is the key to understanding, and it forces you to learn the filter context and the evaluation context. If you avoid that, so if you start not using it, you might tend to think that calculate is hard, is an advanced functions, and you actually don't need to learn evaluation context in order to write DAX the proper way. I see it as a way to avoid the problem at the beginning. That moves you probably a bit farther. So you can write not just basic DAX code, you can write a bit more advanced code. But with that said, you will still have a problem. And to me, the sooner you face the problem, the best. You need to learn evaluation context, do that. There's no other way you will ever be able to write good DAX code. So face the problem, work hard until you understand it, and from that point, everything will be super smooth. At least that's my opinion. But of course, I might be wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Copy and paste the source model from SIN and hope that DAX will do the job. Yeah. But if you think about that, it's not just DAX. It was the same with the... Nowadays, nobody talks about data warehouses anymore. Everything is in a data lake. But we had this problem years ago. We had billions of rows in CRM or ERP system. People wanted to do analysis, and we learned that the proper model was the necessary step in order to perform any kind of analysis. Also, at the time, I don't know about your experience, but I remember when I started learning Kimball, it looked like crazy to me. I was coming from a database background, so the idea of denormalizing data was, no, why should I do that? It's
Exactly.
there's no reason to denormalize and reduce the number of tables. It took me several, I think, years before I accepted that actually Kimball's work was astonishing. It was an incredible amount of work in order to educate people to build star schemas. So we had the problem in the past, trying to push all the data and build models that didn't work. We had to learn the hard way. And finally, we ended up learning to build star schemas and do star schema all the thing. Basically, when I look at the data model, if it's not a star schema, I know there will be a problem. I don't know the problem, but I know there will be some problem because of that.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize that. We deliver a training, the data modeling training, which is interesting because to me, it's an extremely simple training. I always find it hard to deliver because I need to slow down and proceed very, very slowly without taking for granted that the concepts that I'm explaining are well known. And what I discovered is that a lot of business users love that training because they start the training, they don't know what a star schema is. They don't know the difference between a fact table and a dimension. They don't know how to look at the CRM model and think about it as a star schema to change it with Power Query, with SQL, with whatever, in order to build the correct model. So these are basic skills that I took for granted at the beginning, and I'm trying not to take for granted right now, and that's the reason why we created the data modeling training, which worked really well. People are happy when they finish the training. And basically, the training is all about starting with the wrong model, the most naive model that you could use, look at the DAX code, which is incredibly hard, and then slowly move towards a star schema and see that suddenly the DAX code becomes extremely simple.
Yeah, like three rows of DAX and problem solved with the right model.
On the right model, yes, it's really 3 rows. Maybe you need to do some calculations upfront, but that's
Yeah,
fine. What's the problem with that?
yeah.
And I know that you and Marco were working back from Excel and introduction from, you started from there. But how would you describe your Power BI journey? So are there things you would change or you are completely happy with how it looks so far?
You mean my personal trip or the trip of Power BI?
Your personal with
My
Power BI.
personal. Okay. Well, I also write that in the book. At the beginning, I really believed Power Pivot was a joke. I didn't think it was anything serious, and the entire idea of giving such a powerful tool in the hands of users was crazy. So I was totally against the Power Pivot at the beginning. Then, as soon as I started working with it, I realized that there was a lot of potential there. So it was a lot more than just a toy. It was actually an extremely powerful database in the hands of users with a great language. And that was not love at first sight, but probably at second sight. The first sight was a totally hate relationship, like it happens with human beings. But when I started to dig into it, I totally fell in love with it because it was new. There was a lot to learn, and I love to learn. I spend most of my day just learning new details and new things. The way it evolved is good and bad at the same time. So the way DAX evolved is totally fine. They added features, they added functionalities. The fact that they moved from Power Pivot from Excel to Power BI was a very smart move. It really increased the momentum of DAX and of Power BI because monthly delivery of new features and all this new stuff that is happening is totally fine. The thing that I would complain about, not only DAX, about Power BI, is that to me they completely forgot about developers. So they try to make it too simple. They try to pass the message that everything is absolutely simple, easy to use. You don't need to learn, especially you don't need powerful tools. You just need Power BI. And if you want to edit DAX code, then a text box with 3 or 5 lines is more than enough. You don't need more than that. There's no source code. There's no good editor. The IntelliSense is more annoying than useful, in my opinion. This pop-up that hide my code, I totally hate them. So I think Microsoft should have spent more time building developer tools. Do not even mention Visual Studio. I think it's embarrassing just to say the name of Visual Studio thinking about Tabular. So let's forget about its existence at all. There are no developer tools. There's Tableau Editor, but of course that's an external tool, so you need to buy it, you need to use it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love to use Tableau Editor, but it's not Microsoft. It's not integrated, so I would have expected the same effort from Microsoft because they do, instead of transforming regular users in developers, that is, in my opinion, the correct path. You take an Excel user with no development skill, you teach him DAX, and then you move slowly to development kind of skill. they cut on the features, on the development features of Power BI in order to make everything extremely simple. If you think about that, the editor or visual, not of Visual Studio, or Visual Basic in Excel is far more advanced than the editor of DAX, which is crazy. We are talking about something that was here 10 years ago, probably 20 years ago. I'm that old, probably. So that tool was better, and it was in the hand of Excel users, so it was not targeting just developers. So yeah, today Tableau Editor is the solution. It's
Yeah,
great,
obviously.
but it's the solution for something that Microsoft should have provided years ago. I started complaining about the measure grid with the first version of Power Pivot for Excel, and I still remember writing a ranting email to Microsoft saying, "You do not expect us from write DAX in such a way." And the girl answered me saying, "Of course not. It will be a matter of months, and you will see a full editor and a great editing experience for DAX code." Then for several years, every year at the anniversary of that email, I sent that email again saying, "Well, 1 year passed, 2 years passed. When I reached 7 years, I say, okay, that's enough. I'm not going to
But that's
complain
matter of
anymore
months,
because
84 months.
yeah,
If you look
yeah,
from
but
that perspective.
we
Yeah,
reached 120, and we have not yet solved the problem. So it's unlikely anybody will ever be able to solve the problem.
yeah, I guess that Microsoft embraced initiative from the community with Daniel and Darren and you guys from SQL BI creating all those amazing tools to complement, to substitute some things that we don't have in the tool itself, and they embraced it. And yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. It's
community
maybe
is great.
yeah,
I love community. That's fine. But if I were a large company, I would be at least
cautious.
yeah cautious because that's community work. You cannot really rely. You can rely. It works. Everybody's good. There's nothing bad. I'm not saying that the software is unreliable at all. But I'd rather pay a tool that
Yeah,
guarantees. That's the way Tabular Editor went. So Tabular Editor decided to go for a paid version, and I think that's the right move because they need money to implement new stuff. So of course you need to pay for that. And
absolutely.
and I think people are happy to pay for that because they see a business. They want the business to grow because they want to use a system that is reliable.
Yeah, yeah. It saves
DAX
so many
Studio,
hours that it's a great investment.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
if you think about DAX Studio is written by Darwin by Marco. I never wrote a code. I'm not a developer, so I wouldn't know how to write code in DAX Studio. But that's a real community tool. And it's probably the most widely used tool in DAX of anything. So everybody uses DAX Studio. If DAX Studio stops working, that would be troublesome for a lot of people. And there's no real company behind that. There's no, it's just a
A pure community effort.
pure community. Yeah, exactly. And again, to me, that's quite strange. We are getting used to it. I'm using OBS Studio to do all my recordings. And I just recently, it means in a matter of the last few days, I discovered the problems of community work. The new version is incompatible with all the add-ins that were built previously. Therefore, I cannot upgrade to the new version, and we are facing a transition that is not smoothly designed. Of course, that's community. You don't have any guarantee that things are expected to work. But it's a problem. I'd rather pay for a version that is more stable and I can use it whenever I need it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
How much SQL does a Power BI or DAX Pro coming from a BIDS background needs to know? Well, basically nothing. It's not SQL. You don't need to be a master of SQL to know how DAX works. The thing is, you need to know something about databases. You need to know what a database is. You need to know what a relationship is. You need to understand joins, filters, subqueries, concepts that are deeply inside SQL. So The thing is, if you know what a subquery is, then it's likely you know SQL because that's the place where everybody of us learned about subqueries, joins, filters, select statements, projection, the foundation of SQL. So you don't need SQL if you want to learn DAX. It would be very nice if you knew SQL because that means you learned the basics of databases, which is important in order not specifically to learn DAX, but to use Power BI and build a proper data model. If you don't know the difference between placing a filter and building a relationship and why one is better and the effect of a relationship, then you will find it hard to work with DAX. Besides, there's probably another problem is that all BI professionals, we know SQL because we learned SQL many, many years ago. So we use SQL as an example all the time. Like this DAX code works like this SQL code. And we take for granted that you know SQL, you understand totally SQL as if it was your primary language. We know it's not true, but that's it. That's the way we explain things. How do I explain DAX to a 5-year-old? I mean, why on earth anybody of 5 years would be interested at all about DAX? But let me try. How can I explain DAX? That's a tough question. I really don't know the answer because at 5 years you don't know math, you don't know the value of numbers, you don't care at all about all the fancy stuff that we do all day.
Then you just say,
But
kiddo, go learn data modeling first and then come next year to ask me.
yes, but this is the problem. That's a generic problem of explaining our job to anybody. So whenever, I don't know about your experience, but I know that I try to explain to my mother like 100 times what my job is about. And that happens nearly every Christmas. Every year at Christmas, we talk about stuff. You can imagine the Italian Christmas. So the whole family gathered together, we eat, and mother asks us what's going on and what we are doing. And I try to explain for the 20th time what my job is. Her answer is always, well, I didn't understand, but if you enjoy that and it's legal, then it's fine
I'm
to me.
happy.
Yeah, I'm happy. I don't need to know anymore about that. It's hard, but probably I would start to explain something about statistics, about why it is important. But I don't know. 5 years old is really, really young. A teenager maybe might start to like a bit numbers and statistics. But if I think about myself, I totally remember that when I was like 18, I totally believed that Excel was a useless piece of software that I see no use for that. What's the point of writing stuff in different cells and computing numbers? It took me several years before I started to realize that actually statistics has some value.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
oh no, there's a
Yep.
thing that is interesting about that. That's amazing. When I was somewhere in the US, I don't remember, there was a conference and I brought with me a book to give away during my session. And on the fly there, I decided for no particular reason that book was to be gifted to the youngest girl in the audience because I wanted to give it to a girl because I wanted girls to start using DAX and entering BI, and the youngest one just because it was my choice for no reason. There was nothing around that. Then I started delivering my session that was about optimizing models or something quite tough. There was one of the attendees that brought his daughter in the session. So there was this girl, like 11 years old. She stayed the entire time silent, without saying a word, listening, without understanding a word about what I was saying. But she was so quiet, so polite, that at the end of the session, I explained them that was the book for the youngest girl, and it was, of course, her book. So I gave her book, And I told her that she could do whatever, drawing on it or use it for whatever reason. And that happened several years ago. I read a tweet a few months ago, a couple of months ago. This girl is now starting to actively work with Power BI.
Really?
And yeah, that's amazing. She actually read the book and she loved it. So she started her journey in business intelligence because on that day I gave her that book. To me, that's amazing. I mean, I
That's
love the
amazing. That's like
story.
a movie
That's
star.
really nice story. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah.
I need,
So
now I think you need to invite her to doing a session together.
no, I really want. I need to remember first where it was because I would really love to meet her again and understand her path. But I mean, for a teacher, the best thing that you can imagine about yourself is somewhat changing the life of someone for the better. That's the best outcome you would ever strive for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we had a question from Michal. If you had a wish for additional DAX functions.
What would it be? Well, there are several DAX functions that I would love to see, but I think one of the probably most interesting one was some function that can accumulate values of during an iteration. That is something that you always want to do. You want to start from the 1st of January, compute the sales of 1st of January, then sum the sales of the second, then of the third, then on the fourth. That's an iteration. It's a very nice concept in DAX. And I would like to be able to accumulate values. So start with a number and then one after the other, accumulate values, make some decision, compute values, and then return some result. You can do that by mixing filters and different conditions, but it's extremely complex to obtain those results, and the code is very, 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 very hard. Another thing that I would love to see is and that's not easy at all. But I would like to see DAX more integrated with Power BI. The concept of cell, the concept of slicers, the concept that the entity in Power BI are totally unrelated from the entities inside the DAX language. And sometimes people struggle and people find it hard to say, well, I would like to ignore the filter from the slicer that is named whatever. They can't because the concept of slicer is not inside DAX. The two engines, the Tableau engine and the Power BI engine, they are completely decoupled and DAX sits in the middle. DAX knows about Tabular, but it doesn't know about Power BI. So if there were a way to merge them, that would be lovely because people would have a more visual experience and everybody would benefit from such a thing.
More intuitive thing, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Alberto, one more question. Writing or recording? Book or video course? I mean, Marco and yourself are creating so many great content in both forms. So what's your preferred way of consuming content and for creating content?
Okay. The answer is very different because I'm old. Therefore, my preferred way of consuming content is reading articles, reading books. Books necessarily on paper. I cannot even think about reading a technical book on a Kindle or on any kind of device, an electronic device. I really need paper to move back and forth and to feel the paper. Or articles on the web. And the thing that I love most about the articles is that I can quickly scroll up and down and go to a topic that is interesting, then go back and learn this way. So consuming to me is reading. Reading is the only way I can learn. But I also know that youngsters, they love to watch things. They love to watch videos. And videos are easy to build. It took me a lot of time to start to understand that how to make a video. At the beginning, I was striving for perfection all the time. That means recording the same video again and again and again until it was perfect. Eventually, I realized that that's totally useless. You just talk to a camera, and if you make a mistake, you just explain the mistake and go forward, and people just like it. So videos are very easy to build. Uh, I don't know if I like them more than writing a book. Right now, we are writing a new book, a new training, a new video course, and I love the book. I love the book because again, you can change things all the time, and you are forced to focus and to explain details in a way that in a video you are not forced to. In a book, you really need to understand what you're saying because otherwise, you read it and you feel that things are not yet perfect. In a video, you can just blah 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 yada yada, and people do not understand that you actually don't know that specific topic. So the way that I love the most to deliver content is definitely a book. Even though I know people love videos, so I also like optimizing DAX 2.0. The answer is at some point. It's a very Italian answer.
Matter of
The
months.
thing is, sorry?
Matter of months.
Matter of
Like-
months, yeah, any number of months. No, believe me, Bernard, we are working really hard. I mean, before starting this interview, I was writing chapters about the Optimizing DAX 2.0. The thing is, the first version of Optimizing DAX was focusing only on Vertipack. So it was a DAX, Vertipack, and that's it. A few examples. And to be honest, we didn't understand all the details. We had some feelings, but nobody knew the details. So whatever we wrote, it was good. It was better than nothing. Now we have Vertipack, which evolved a lot. The optimizer evolved a lot. So there are a lot of new optimizations that were not here when we started the first version. Not only we have direct query. At the time when we recorded the first version of Optimizing DAX, direct query was not even an option. It was so slow that nobody cared about direct query. As of today, direct query is an option. There are models in direct query that work nicely. So we need to add an entire chapter that is around half of the book only for direct query. And because it was too simple, they added composite models. And composite models, they increase the complexity again by a lot. And then you can have a model that contains a direct query model, a Vertipack model, and direct query over analysis services all together in the same model. Optimizing that stuff is a nightmare. So we started writing, and I very quickly discovered that there are still a lot of things that I don't understand, that I don't know. So in the process of writing, we are learning and we are changing stuff. So we are starting to record the first videos quite soon. But for sure, it will not be out in 2022, and it will be in 2023. I don't know exactly when, and as soon as we have good news, of course, we will publish them. But do not expect anything, at least the book, before 2023, because there's really a lot of work to do.
One more
From 1 to 10, how much do you like calculation groups?
Please say one. Please say one.
Why? No.
Because he's a fan of calculation group, just an internal joke. You know?
I know. I read Bernard. There are different answers. As a consultant, definitely a 10, because it's so easy to make mistakes with calculation groups that as a consultant, it's a gold mine. People will create a lot of problems and they will ask for help. So you will charge for that, and that's good. I think if I were to give a fair vote as a usability feature, I would go around 7. I would not say 10 because it seems to me half-baked. It's not finished. There are details that are missing and they didn't implement that. You cannot assign, for example, a default value to a calculation item. So you cannot decide that the default member of a calculation item, which is an extremely important and needed feature, which is not there. There's no editing experience. If you want to build a calculation group, you need Tableau Editor. That's insane. What's the point of even building a feature if you do not provide a good UI to use them? And then there are a lot of things that could be better. Performance-wise, sometimes they create issues. As soon as you have 2 or 3 calculation groups, the precedence becomes a nightmare to say it the right way. So there are details that make them hard. With that said, they are just beautiful. So they are extremely powerful. But if they finish them, that would be absolutely great.
And when we are talking about features now, what's the one you anticipate the most in upcoming roadmap?
The most important feature. Oh, I know, but I cannot tell you. I think a couple of hours from now, maybe no more than 3 hours from now, that feature will be public for the first time, and that's the feature that I see. It's years I'm waiting for the feature, and I've been talking with Microsoft for a lot of time. I would really love to tell you that, but trust me, it's just a matter of hours. And the world of DAX and the world of Power BI is going to change for the better. I
I
do
think
hope that feature will be baked the right way, but just stay tuned. I think it's a matter of.
yeah, I think I'm sitting in Chicago where the announcement should happen probably, and I think it will be all over the Twitter till the end of the day. So let's all be
Um, I
active there.
really look forward to see Twitter in a few hours because I would expect it to really explode as soon as people realize what they are seeing. Because anyway, we cannot talk about that. Just some hype, something really, really great is happening, and that's gonna change the way the way all the DAX you ever have to write is gonna be, and it
Okay, we are
always
waiting for
lowers a lot.
yeah, we are waiting for the announcement, and then we are waiting for your video, your or Marcos video in next few days on that feature.
As soon as we can use it, because I think I don't know. Uh, well, I cannot tell anything, so let's
Okay,
see.
mouth shut. Understood. Okay, so when I mentioned that you are doing videos and stuff like this, we saw Marco recently started doing a whiteboard series of videos. You're creating those, let's call them regular videos, explaining
Uh-huh.
different DEX functions. So how do you decide who works on what, and how do you split uh, uh, those tasks between yourself? I think it's interesting maybe to hear
Yeah,
something
but it's
about this.
actually incredibly simple because the reason why I and Marco we work together really well is because I love to do things that he hates, and he loves to do things that I hate. Therefore, the split of videos, content, and any kind of job happens quite naturally. As soon as there's something he doesn't like, he asks me to do that, and I do my job. For example, I love to explain things. I do not like to go really, really deep into the technical details. So when it's time to write some chapter of a book, he makes a lot of work in understanding all the technical details, preparing demos, and then builds a skeleton of the chapter. Like this topic might be interesting, or look at that details is really weird and worth explaining. And this is where I start and say, okay, so this is the skeleton. Now I need to transform it into something that a human can read and understand. And I spend days finding the perfect example or the way to explain the details, splitting a complex concept in smaller parts so that it can be digested in a better way. So the separation of work happens in a totally natural way. Regarding videos, since we are we love to criticize each other work, and I think that's the most important quality that makes us the two of us together more than just the two of us together. That whenever I write something, I know that it will go under the eyes of the most critic person that I know about my personal job. So he will find whatever mistake, and that's incredibly useful because it forces me to write things that are good, and I know that if there is a mistake, it will be catched before it goes to the public. And the same happens with his job with me. So
That's
when there's a
amazing.
new idea, like Marco started the whiteboard series, he showed me the first video, and I just answered like, I mean, we are not gonna publish them. Of course, they are ugly. Nobody will ever want to watch a video like this. And we start fighting and we start discussing. At the end, there was a value, so I realized that actually that the series was nice. He changed some way of describing things, and now the videos are out. That's not the way I personally like to deliver content. I use different patterns. I like to write on on a whiteboard, but not all the time. So we basically do what we like because that's the easiest way to do what we things that are actually good. And we try to convince the other that what we like is actually good.
Okay.
If we succeed, then we know that the public will like it.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that's a good one. But with all that content, so I think I never saw something around you publicly. So with publishing videos, writing blog, book, everything, how do you relax? How do you spend your time, your free time, if you have any?
Yeah, the real question is if you have any. That's probably the weirdest question you can make to any geek, especially geek like me, because uh, I am blessed and doomed at the same time because my job is my primary passion, is the thing that I love the most of nearly anything. Uh, so if I have, sometimes I have to relax because I totally need that. That means going on vacation somewhere without a PC and doing things that I typically don't like laying down on a beach and doing nothing at all, sun bath and wasting time to relax. Uh, but most of my spare time is just working. And even though it looks a miserable life, and I totally understand people that think that spending your life doing your job is a miserable way of wasting your time, actually, that's the thing that I love the most. It's the thing that I totally like to do. If you ask me how to spend an evening, if I have nothing better to do, or if I don't meet a friend or go to dinner with a fiance or do something different, uh, I prefer to turn on the PC and start writing code or reading some article. When I go on the treadmill to do some gym, I typically have some videos that I'm watching some videos. Sometimes they are technical videos, sometimes they are movies. But yeah, relax to me. The level of personal satisfaction when you finish something, writing an article, that to me is so relaxing. You just go to sleep saying, wow, that was gorgeous. I loved it.
And they did it.
I just, no, I
Yeah.
discovered during the pandemic was hard because during the pandemic, actually staying at home all time, not traveling, not going outside for dinner, not meeting friends, I actually worked for several months in a row without ever stopping for more than a few hours. And I started doing gardening, which I hate. I don't like gardening at all. Never like to make my hands dirty with uh, planting flowers and doing stuff. But I forced myself to do that because I was burning out. I was not able. I was working too much, definitely too much. So I had to find something to do that was not related to any PC. But yeah, my primary hobby is basically my work.
Okay. Alberto, we will take just a few minutes of your time, slowly wrapping up. I would like if you can share, in your opinion, what are the three most concepts to grasp in Power BI? You touched in the beginning on some of them, but one, let's say, to separate them, one for beginners, one for intermediate, and one for advanced users.
You mean Power BI, not specifically DAX?
Not specifically DAX, but let's say Power BI concept.
Okay. Well, the first and by far the most important thing is understand a bit of data modeling. Not everything. You don't need to be a master of data modeling, but you need to understand what a star schema is and why a star schema is important. That's by far the most important skill you need to acquire. That means learning a bit of M, a bit of Power Query, and understand how to shape your data. I always teach my students, you need to see at CRM data or Excel files as not the data. This is the source of your data. That source need to be prepared. It's like the difference between ingredients and a pizza. Ingredients are ingredients, but what you want to eat is pizza. So the process of transforming the basic ingredients, tomatoes, mozzarella, flour, and stuff into pizza, that is the skill that you need to master. And that is data modeling. Data modeling, Power Query, at least the basics of Power Query, and then DAX. I think these are the three main ingredients. Start with basic DAX, nothing fancy, nothing complex, and then slowly move to the next level. And probably I'm forgetting another important skill, but I'm forgetting because I totally miss it, the ability to build a meaningful report, meaningful and nice looking report. I typically stop my journey with any data model when the numbers are computed correctly. But then those numbers need to be shown to users in a nice way, in a way that conveys the correct message. So yeah, visualization is probably another extremely important skill that you need to acquire. And I typically miss it because I don't have it. To me, a report is just a number. As soon as the number is there, whatever. I don't care about how to show it. But I see the difference between a number and the number visualized properly. That's really, really important.
This one is
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And if you want to start, there's no point in starting with DAX. DAX comes after you have a good data model, because DAX on the
I,
wrong data model is going to be a serious issue.
I have Alex Powers here somewhere on the floor, so I will run to him now.
tell him. Yeah. Okay. So, Alberto, thank you very much for joining us and for spending your time and sharing your thoughts with us. It was a pleasure to have you at Data Jazz Show, and personally looking forward to seeing you in Denmark next week.
Yeah, next
Uh,
week.
yeah. All the others, thanks for joining. Augustine, enjoy Chicago and say hello to all the Power BI crew over
Yeah,
there.
I will. It's a great conference here and a lot of great speakers. So looking forward to next 2 days, and also to all the watchers on our channel and entire community. Thank you for participating with a lot of questions. So we had questions coming in. We couldn't pose them all. We had additional questions. So Alberto, with you, we could chat probably entire day. And thanks for your time.
Thanks to you guys, and hope to see you soon.
See you soon. Have a
Ciao.
nice evening. Ciao.
Ciao,
Ciao.
and enjoy DAX.
Yeah.